Hi, this is Amanda Mayer, and this is Communicating and Advocating for School Community Needs. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at a few board policies from around the state of Kansas and see what their policies are as far as regarding communicating with diverse groups within their schools. The first one we'll look at is Sacred Heart. This is the school that I am currently at. In our handbook, it says that communication with diverse backgrounds, there's nothing specific about diverse backgrounds necessarily, but it does have some general guidelines for communicating with families, which include establishing a friendly and cooperative rapport with parents, and the necessity of keeping parents informed regarding their students' progress. It does have policies that addresses racial and disability harassment. And then it does not address specific diverse groups, just in general, again, communicating with all parents. And although there is indication that there is training that is provided for teachers, there's nothing specific about communication, training for communication with diverse populations. Next, I looked at USD 315 Colby, which is the public school that is in our town where I teach. Again, there was nothing really specifically stated as far as communication with families of diverse backgrounds. It did address the racial and disability harassment, but nothing else. And it didn't specifically address diverse groups. And again, there was nothing specific about training for communication with diverse populations. Next, I looked at Goodland, which is a town that's not too far from Colby. Again, it's pretty much the same thing. I found that Goodland and then Hayes, where I taught before I came to Colby, Colby, and even into Salina, they all were really similar. It was like they used the same guidelines, the same models for their board policies. I think the Kansas Board of Education has guidelines for what school board policies should look like, and they all looked very similar. They all follow the same format and had the basic ideas and wordings. I think that maybe these policies don't include specific policies on communication with diverse families because it isn't in the format that's provided by the state of Kansas. It must not be required because all of these schools, again, looked very similar in their wording. I do think that is important and it should be included. I do have a feeling that soon some of these policies with changes as regarding communication will be added, especially with the way that education is going now. Distance learning has forced us all to look at education in new ways and has highlighted the importance of communication and tools that we can use for communication. So I have a feeling that the state of Kansas will require that to be in their school board policies, and so these schools will add that to their policies. Next, we're going to talk about the importance of training for staff on communication with families with diverse backgrounds. We had lots of resources that showed us the importance of communication, that, communication, family involvement. Communication leads to family involvement, which leads to higher student achievement, better attitudes towards school, lower dropout rates, and increased community support for education. Those home and school connections are essential for the academic success of all learners. But yet there's research out there that shows that even though we all know it's important, schools have a hard time sometimes engaging all families, especially those with diverse backgrounds. I found this interesting, the 4 core beliefs that are important for all educators to hold, and I truly believe this. No matter their background, their diverse background, that all families have dreams and want what is best for their children. All families have the capacity to support their child's learning. It just might not all look the same. Families and staff should be equal partners in their child's education. But the responsibility for building and sustaining the partnership between the school and the home and the community rests primarily with the staff, with the school staff, and ultimately the school leaders. So it's our job to create those relationships, to initiate that communication, to provide that so that families are engaged and are able to better help their students. This highlights the need for training, why teachers need training on how to communicate. Every culture has its own set of assumptions and tendencies when it comes to face-to-face interactions, and trying to get your point across effectively can be different. Knowing those cultural norms and necessities, how people prefer is different for each background, for each way that people were brought up, and understanding that can make it really difficult for a teacher to navigate that among their parents. There's over 350 languages spoken in U.S. homes today. Creating systematic ways for educators and families to communicate with each other can often be overwhelming. I currently don't teach in a school that has a lot of diversity, but have been a part of schools that do have a little bit of diversity, and it is overwhelming when not everyone speaks the same language, and finding resources for some languages as far as communication tools are a lot easier than other languages, and so that creates a problem for teachers, and so we need trained on how to deal with that. A single conversation, whether it's a positive conversation or a negative conversation, a single interaction, I would say, can set the tone for the family's opinion of the staff and the school. So it's important to develop effective communication skills so that those interactions can be positive, and so that, again, families feel comfortable engaging and being a part of their students' learning. Another research said that schools struggle to actively engage high numbers of parents and other family members. Even though we know it's a priority, it's hard to get high numbers of parents involved. Minority and lower income families and families that have limited English are often highly underrepresented in school level decision making, as well as family involvement activities. Again, it's not that they don't want to be a part of that, but because of communication barriers or cultural norms, it's sometimes more difficult to get those families of different cultural backgrounds involved. So this shows the need for more training on how we as a staff can implement that and create those relationships and bonds. Some other things that we need to consider, that we need to realize when making communication effective, is that it's super important to build those trusting relationships with families, and that's done through effective communication. You have to build that relationship so that families want to be involved and feel comfortable being involved in their students' education. Setting a tone of respect and inclusivity includes strong communication with families. Also gives teachers an opportunity to invite family involvement and share curricular goals, materials, and resources. Again, it's that strong communication that is necessary, and we need to have the tools in order to be able to have that. As the level of trust increases between the teachers and the family and administrators, the families become not only more willing to work together with the teachers, but they also develop higher expectations for success. So by building those relationships, it relies on the strong, trusting relationships between parents and educators. Family engagement, we've shown, is super important, but that all is reliant on the trusting relationships that you build. And that relationship is based on the perception of each other's reliability, competence, honesty, and openness. So in order to connect all of that together, you have to build that relationship, and communication is the key in doing that. It is important to acknowledge that it can take time for families to feel safe and comfortable and friendly. Using a combination of communication styles with families might work best to meet their needs. There are so many tools out there now to help build effective communication between parents and students, and it's often important to find what works best for each parent, for each family. Some prefer electronic communication, whether that's emails or through apps like Remind, text messages, Seesaw, digital tools. There's a ton of them out there now that we have become familiar with, partly because of distance education, but the need for that and the ease of that. There's tons of things out there that teachers can use. Again, training on those might be necessary so that teachers can effectively use those. Some parents like electronic communication, digital communication. Some, though, prefer weekly newsletters or face-to-face meetings. Some parents might need written communication in their native language, or even translators that are readily available so that they can have those face-to-face conversations. Each family has different preferences. They come from different cultural backgrounds that have different norms in how they should communicate, or what's appropriate communication between home and school. And it's important that you build the trusting relationships so that you can know what each parent needs and how to effectively communicate with them. Thank you so much. These are my references. Have a great day.